You,
Talia lifted her head.
back row, stand up. How did you get in here?
His voice echoed across the hall, cold, authoritative.
This is a graduate seminar, not a field trip.
I registered, Professor.
Are we admitting cockroaches and rats now?
Eyes full of judgment, sneakers, an old notebook bound with a rubber band.
You'd be better off back in the sewer.
Talia's jaw tightened. Mathematics doesn't discriminate by appearance. He sneered, pointed at the blackboard. 12 years of his life's work, an equation no one had ever solved.
Then solve it. Right now, or get out.
He held out the chalk, 2 fingers, like feeding a dog. She stepped forward. Just minutes after she went to the blackboard, his glasses would have to fall off because of the unbelievable happening. Rewind. 3 weeks earlier, Harvard, Department of Mathematics. The kind of building that makes you whisper. Marble floors, oil portraits of dead men on every wall. The smell of old paper and older money. Harold Whitaker had been here for 31 years. His name was on a textbook every PhD student in the country had read. He had been on the Fields Medal shortlist twice. He ran the most exclusive seminar in the department. When he walked down the hall, faculty stepped aside without thinking about it. 62 years old, silver hair, round glasses, a chipped mug from the university he had attended in 1982. If you asked Harold Whitaker whether he was a fair man, he would have pointed to Henry Callaway. And he would have meant it. Henry was 28, fifth-year PhD candidate. He came from a town of 800 people in rural Vermont. His father was a plumber. His mother took in laundry. He was the first person in 4 generations of Callaways to finish college. Harold had noticed him in the 3rd week of his first year. Quiet kid. Worked too hard. Ate cheap. Without telling anyone, Harold set up a small private fund. It covered Henry's flight home every semester so the boy could see his parents. He edited Henry's job market materials line by line. One Tuesday evening, Harold walked past his office and saw Henry eating instant noodles at his desk. The boy looked up, embarrassed. Harold said nothing. He went into his own office, came back 2 minutes later, set a campus dining card on the corner of Henry's desk, walked away, never mentioned it again. This is the man you need to understand, not a monster. A man who genuinely believed he could spot talent when it walked through the door. He just could not see Talia Underwood. Talia was 26. She had transferred to Harvard mid-year from a small state university where she finished her undergraduate degree in 2.5 years with a perfect grade point average. Her fellowship covered tuition. It did not cover rent. She worked 12 hours a week at the library and waited tables on Saturday nights. She lived in a studio above a laundromat. She kept a photograph of her grandmother on the inside front cover of her notebook. Her grandmother had been a retired postal worker from South Carolina, the one who taught her long division on the back of a grocery receipt. The first week of the semester, Talia met Professor Whitaker in the hallway outside his office. She was reading the bulletin board. He was carrying a stack of exam papers. He stopped in front of her, held the stack out. "You, run these to the copy room. I need them by 4. He did not look at her face. He started walking again. A second-year student named Eleanor Bennett was nearby. "Professor, she's in your seminar." Whitaker paused, turned, adjusted his glasses, smiled gently. "Oh, well, the offer of coffee still stands." A small chuckle. He walked away. Talia did not react. She wrote something in her notebook, closed it, walked to class. The second week. Graduate seminar. Whitaker was proving a lemma on the board. 15 students. Talia raised her hand. "Professor, step 3 assumes a condition you haven't stated. The bound only holds if the function is bounded below." Whitaker did not pause. "That is a common confusion at the undergraduate level. Moving on." He kept writing. 10 minutes later, his teaching assistant, Charles Hollis, raised his hand. Charles was 30, tall, Whitaker's protege. Professor, I think we need to state the lower bound assumption explicitly. Otherwise, step 3 doesn't quite work. Whitaker turned around, beamed. Excellent observation, Charles. This is the kind of careful reading we need. He wrote Charles's name in the corner of the board, like a small medal. Eleanor glanced sideways at Talia. Talia was writing in her notebook. She did not look up. Charles Hollis felt something he had never felt in that room before. He opened his mouth. He closed it again. The third Wednesday, late afternoon, Talia walked to Whitaker's office to return a book. His door was cracked open. 2 voices inside. Whitaker and his colleague, Lawrence Caldwell. She raised her hand to knock. Then she heard her name. Look, Lawrence, I support opening doors, you know that. But when admissions prioritizes optics over preparation, we end up with students who cannot keep up. The Underwood girl, a perfect example. Hardworking, I'm sure, but she is drowning, and everyone is pretending not to see it. A pause. Caldwell made a sound, not agreement, not disagreement. Talia stood very still in the hallway. She set the book on a chair outside the door. She turned. She walked away. That night she opened the bottom drawer of her desk. She took out a small notebook dated 2018. The handwriting belonged to a 20-year-old. On the first page, in pencil, Lemma 4.2, assumptions stronger than stated in section 3.1. See counterexample, notebook 3, page 17. Write to Professor Whitaker? The last line had a single pencil stroke crossed through it. She did not cross it again. She looked at it for a long time. 2 days later, the colloquium was announced, recorded, archived, the whole department invited. Eleanor caught her in the hallway that morning. Whatever you do, do not raise your hand. He eats people for sport in there. Talia just smiled. What had she decided 2 days earlier, standing outside that cracked door? She had decided to stop apologizing for taking up space. That is the short answer. The long answer is what happened next. Friday morning, 9 o'clock. Science Center, Lecture Hall D. 180 seats. Every one of them full. Cameras at the back of the room. Department chair in the front row. Dean Margaret Ashford, 2 seats over. Charles Hollis at the side of the stage with a stack of handouts. Talia walked in 5 minutes early. She sat in the 3rd row. She opened her notebook to a page that had been worked over for months. Eleanor sat down next to her. Last chance to walk out. I'm good. Whitaker arrived at 9 on the dot. Suit, no tie. He took the podium like he had taken it 500 times before. Because he had. For 40 minutes, he was magnificent. He walked the room through the architecture of his life's work, the Whitaker conjecture, 12 years of building toward a single statement. He moved through 3 preliminary lemmas with the rhythm of a man who had given this talk in his sleep. Then he reached the centerpiece, a block of mathematics he called structurally unsolvable in closed form. His whole career rested on proving that no clean answer existed. He chalked it onto the board in 3 long lines. He stepped back. He opened the floor. 2 days earlier, he had said Talia was drowning. Today, he was about to push her into the water in front of 180 people. His eyes scanned the room. They landed on her. You, in the back. You've been writing this whole time. Care to share with the class? A few people turned to look. One of them smirked. Talia looked up. I have a question, Professor. Then come up here. Don't make us crane our necks. Show us where you would even begin. The room held its breath. The trap was obvious to everyone except Whitaker. He expected her to freeze, to mumble, to shrink, to retreat to her seat and never raise her hand in his department again. Charles Hollis, at the side of the stage, looked down at his shoes. Eleanor's hand closed around Talia's arm. Her grip was tight. Talia, don't. He is setting you up. Talia took her notebook with her. She walked up the aisle. Her sneakers squeaked on the marble floor. It was the only sound in the room. She did not walk up there because she was angry. She walked up because she had stopped thinking she was wrong. Whitaker met her at the board with mock ceremony. He held out a piece of chalk between two fingers, the way you might hand a child a crayon. She took it. She did not look at him. She did not look at the centerpiece equation. She did not even glance at it. She walked 5 steps to the left, to one of the preliminary lemmas, the third one, the one he had skipped through quickly because it was, in his words, well known. She tapped the chalkboard, once, twice, underneath a single line of his proof. Before we go anywhere with the main problem, I think there is something wrong here. Whitaker's smile did not move, but his eyes did. The room watched. She had not touched the equation everyone expected her to fail at. She had walked past it. She had stopped at a step Harold Whitaker had used in 3 published papers over the last 6 years. What had she seen that no one else had? She did not start with the equation. She started with one line, the third lemma. A piece of mathematics so small that most people in the room had stopped paying attention to it 10 minutes ago. Stay with me. You do not need to know math. You need to know one idea. A lemma is a stepping stone. You use it to cross from one side of an argument to the other. If the stepping stone holds, you keep walking. If it cracks, everything you built on top of it falls into the water. The crack Talia had found was small. So small that for 6 years no one had seen it. So small that the man who wrote it did not see it now. She turned to the board. She did not lecture. She asked a question. Professor, your paper in 2018, Theorem 1, the proof of the bound. You assumed the function was bounded below by a constant. Is that correct? Whitaker blinked. The question was so specific that for a moment he could not answer. He had not thought about that paper in over a year. He shifted his weight. Yes, that is correct. And on this board today, in step 3 of the same lemma, you wrote the function was bounded below, just bounded below, without the constant. She wrote both versions side by side on the chalkboard. The 2 lines looked almost the same. Almost. The difference was 4 characters. In her 2018 version, the bound was a fixed number, a real solid floor. You could stand on it. In the today version, the bound could drift toward 0, a floor that sank under you. She turned to face him. She did not raise her voice. The first version is what you proved. The second version is what you are using today. They are not the same statement. A few faculty members in the second row leaned forward. Whitaker's mouth pulled into a tight line. That is a notational shorthand. The meaning is the same. Then can I show you what happens when you read it that way? She did not wait for permission. She moved to the open section of the board. She wrote out a specific case, a small one, the kind a second-year graduate student could check on a napkin. She picked a function, a simple one, numbers most people in the room would recognize from a first course. She showed it satisfied the today version of the assumption. Then she walked through what his lemma claimed should follow. The numbers did not agree. She stepped back. She circled the contradiction with 2 short lines of chalk. Under the assumption you wrote today, this case satisfies the setup, but the conclusion fails, which means the lemma, as stated this morning, is not what you proved in 2018. Think of it like this. He had a recipe that worked. He shortened the recipe to save time. The shortened version looked the same on paper. It was not. The cake fell. A graduate student in the front row inhaled audibly, loud enough for the cameras at the back of the hall to pick it up later. Dean Margaret Ashford, 2 seats over from the department chair, did not move, but her eyes did not leave the board. Whitaker stared at the chalkboard. at his own handwriting next to Talia's.
You have misunderstood the setup.
Talia did not argue. She did not raise her voice. She did one thing. She walked over to the chalk tray. She picked up another piece. She turned around. She held it out to him. Then please, write your 2018 assumption on the board next to mine, from memory, so everyone can see them together. The room went still. A 4-second silence, maybe 5. Long enough that someone in the back coughed. He took the chalk. His hand did not shake, but it took him a half-second longer than it should have. He turned to the board. He hesitated. He started to write. He stopped. He started again. He wrote a version of his own assumption. It was not quite the 2018 version. It was somewhere between the two. He knew it the moment he finished. The room knew it too. 3 lines on the chalkboard now. His original, his today version, his memory version, all slightly different from each other. Talia did not point this out. She did not need to. Charles Hollis, at the side of the stage, was no longer looking at his shoes. He was looking at the board. His face had gone very still. He had been at the department for 4 years. He had read every paper Whitaker had ever published. He was looking at 3 different versions of one assumption, written by the same man in the same hour. And he was the one person in the room who knew exactly what that meant. Whitaker forced a smile. He turned to the room. As I said, notational shorthand. The substance of the argument is unchanged. Thank you for the question. He walked back to the podium. He continued his lecture. He moved past the contested lemma as quickly as he could. He did not return to step 3. Talia walked back to her seat. 2 faculty members in the second row exchanged a glance. One of them began typing on a phone. She passed Eleanor. Eleanor's hand was over her mouth. She whispered, "Holy, Talia, holy." Talia opened her notebook again. She wrote 1 line. She closed it. She did not turn around. She did not look at Whitaker again for the rest of the lecture, but she had said one more thing. Before she left the board, quietly, to him alone, with 2 cameras catching every word. "Professor, I am not saying the conjecture is wrong. I am saying this line does not get you there." She had spotted the crack. The question now was whether anyone in that room would let her widen it. Whitaker did not let it go. He caught her in the corridor outside Lecture Hall D. The cameras were down, the students were filing out, but the dean was still there. 2 senior faculty stood near the water fountain. Charles Hollis hovered 6 feet behind his advisor, pretending to read something on his phone. "Miss Underwood, a moment." Talia stopped. She did not turn all the way around. "I would like to offer you an opportunity." A few people slowed their walk. Dean Ashford turned. So did the 2 faculty. "Tomorrow afternoon, 2 o'clock, smaller room, special departmental session. Every senior faculty member in attendance, 2 visiting mathematicians from Princeton, friends of mine in town for the week, and a representative from the editorial board of the journal that is about to publish the next chapter of this work." He let that last detail sit in the air for a moment. He smiled, the kind of smile that has teeth in it. "You will have 30 minutes. You can present your counterexample formally, on the record. I will respond. We will let the panel decide." He paused. "If, of course, you still believe there is an issue." The corridor went quiet. Dean Margaret Ashford stepped forward. She was 68, 29 years on faculty, the first woman to chair this department. She had seen this kind of move many times. "Harold, she is a first-semester graduate student. This is a senior departmental session. That is not a comparable platform." "She raised the question publicly, Margaret. She should be free to defend it publicly. I am only offering her the courtesy of a real audience." The dean did not respond immediately. She looked at Talia. "You do not have to accept this." Talia looked at her. looked at Whitaker, looked at the floor for one breath. She looked back at the dean. "I will be there." Whitaker nodded. The smile widened just a little. 2 o'clock, room 402. I will have the chalk ready. He walked away. The faculty followed. The dean did not. She lingered for a moment. She put a hand briefly on Talia's elbow. Then she walked on. Eleanor was already there. She had been standing behind a pillar, listening to all of it. Talia, no. This is a setup. He has all night to load up. He is bringing in Princeton. He is bringing in a journal editor. They are going to bury you. I know. Then why? Because my grandmother taught me long division on the back of a grocery receipt, and I am tired of pretending I cannot read. Eleanor stared at her. What does that mean? It means I am going. She started walking down the corridor. Eleanor jogged to catch up. Talia, listen to me. If you go in there and you are wrong about even one comma, your career here is over. He will make sure of it. I know. And if you are right, I know that too. They reached the end of the corridor. Talia stopped. She turned to face her friend. Eleanor, I am right. I have known I am right for 6 years. I just stopped trusting it. I am done with that. Eleanor opened her mouth, closed it, hugged her instead, hard, briefly. Then she said the thing only a friend can say. Then go home, sleep 4 hours, eat something, and get ready to ruin a man's afternoon. Talia walked home alone. Behind her, in the corridor, Charles Hollis was the last to leave. He stood for a long moment outside the lecture hall. He pulled out his phone. He scrolled to a folder he had not opened in 11 months. Notes he had taken at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. Things he had wanted to ask Whitaker. Things he had decided at the time to keep to himself. He stood there. He hovered his thumb over the folder. He did not open it. He locked his phone. He walked away. He went home. He did not sleep well that night. 3 open questions hung over the night. Would the Princeton mathematicians look at the math or look at the name? What was in the notebook Talia had been carrying around for 6 years? And why did the man who had worked side by side with Harold Whitaker for 4 years look like he had eaten something rotten? Talia's apartment was a single room above a laundromat. The floor smelled faintly of dryer sheets. The radiator hissed every 20 minutes. The clock on the microwave read 9:47. She did not turn on the overhead light. She walked to the closet. She pulled out a cardboard box from the bottom. Inside the box were notebooks. Not one notebook, a stack, 12 of them. Cheap composition books with marbled covers. Some were 6 years old. The handwriting on the first one belonged to a 20-year-old. This is the part nobody at Harvard knew. Talia Underwood had been reading Harold Whitaker's papers since she was 19 years old. She was a sophomore at a state college in South Carolina. Her math professor, a man named Dr. Reginald Holloway, kept journals stacked on every flat surface of his office. One afternoon, he had pressed a copy of Whitaker's 2018 paper into her hands. He had said one sentence. "Read it slowly. Tell me what you think." She had read it for 3 weeks. Every line, every footnote, every reference. She had taken it apart on the back of grocery receipts in her grandmother's kitchen. And at the end of those 3 weeks, she had written a single page of notes. The page said, in pencil, that there was a hole in lemma 4.2. A small one, so small you had to be looking for it. She had shown the page to Dr. Holloway. He had read it twice. He had set it down. He had said, gently, that her reasoning was correct. He had also said this: "Talia, do not write him a letter, not yet. You are 19. He is on the Fields Medal shortlist. Wait until you have a name, then you can use it." He had been trying to protect her. She understood that now. She had not understood it then. She had crossed out the line in her notebook that said, "Write to Professor Whitaker." She had put the notebook in a box. She had moved on. She had finished her degree in 2.5 years. She had won a fellowship. She had gotten into Harvard. And every year, on her birthday, she had taken the notebook out and looked at it, just to remind herself she had not imagined it. Now she opened the box. She took out the bottom notebook, the one from 19. The page was still there. The line was still crossed out. She sat down at her kitchen table. She turned on the lamp. She opened a new notebook. She started over. Across town, on the 3rd floor of the math building, Harold Whitaker was not sleeping either. He had pulled his 2018 paper from a filing cabinet. He had it open on his desk next to today's lecture notes. The two assumptions sat in front of him, side by side, the same way Talia had written them on the board 4 hours earlier. He stared at them for a long time. Charles Hollis stood in the doorway, holding a paper cup of coffee. "Harold, listen, on the lemma. I have been thinking about it for the last hour. I think she might be right on one narrow point. I think we should consider she is not right. I am not saying she is right about the conjecture. I am saying she might be right that the lemma—" "Charles." Whitaker's voice had not been loud, but it had changed. "I have been doing this work for 31 years. I do not need a first-semester student to tell me what my own assumptions are." Charles closed his mouth. It was the first time in 4 years that he had heard Whitaker raise his voice. It was not loud. It was sharp, like a knife being unwrapped. Charles set the coffee on the desk. He walked out. He stood in the corridor for a moment. He looked at the door he had just closed. Then he walked back to his own cubicle. He sat down. He opened his laptop. He pulled up the 11-month-old folder on his phone. He started reading his own notes. In her apartment, Talia hit her first wall at 1 a.m. She had recovered the old counterexample from her 19-year-old notebook. She had checked it. And she had found a problem with her own argument, a subtle one, a condition she had assumed without writing it down. Without that condition, the counterexample fell apart. She put her pencil down. She closed her eyes. She did not panic. She had been here before, 6 years ago. Same kind of kitchen table, different apartment. She opened her eyes. She rewrote the counterexample from scratch. She made every assumption explicit. She tested each step. She found a cleaner case, a simpler one that worked. The clock on the microwave read 3:11. Her phone buzzed. Eleanor. "Tal, are you up?" "Word is," Whitaker pulled a third mathematician onto a red-eye out of Newark. "He lands at Logan at 6 a.m. Charles has been at the office since 10. There is a math blog that posted something about tomorrow and then took it down 20 minutes later. People are watching." Talia read the message. She did not respond. She set the phone face down. She opened the front of her oldest notebook. The photograph was still there, black and white. A woman with gray hair pulled back tight, wire-frame glasses, standing on the front porch of a small white house in South Carolina, holding a grocery receipt in one hand and a pencil in the other. Her grandmother had died 2 years ago, a heart attack on a Sunday morning between church and lunch. The line her grandmother had said, more than once, more than 100 times, was this: "Show your work, baby, like the world is watching, because one day it will be." Talia looked at the photograph for a long time. She closed the notebook. She put it back in the box. She kept the photograph out. Her phone buzzed again, an email this time, from an address that ended in .edu. 3 words and an initial. Bring everything. M.A. She read it twice. She did not smile, but her shoulders dropped half an inch. She kept working. At 4:30 a.m., the rumor mill outside had picked up speed. Senior faculty were texting each other. A postdoc in Berlin had reposted the deleted blog item to a private Slack channel. The phrase Whittaker lemma was being typed into search bars in 3 time zones. None of this reached Talia's apartment. She was reading her own handwriting from when she was 20. Some people prepare for a fight by sharpening a knife. Talia prepared by trusting the girl she used to be. At 6 a.m., the sky outside her window started to gray. She closed her notebooks. She stacked them in her bag. She walked to the bathroom. She washed her face. She tied her hair back. She put on the same sneakers she had worn the day before. She picked up the photograph of her grandmother. She slid it into the front of the notebook she would carry into room 402. She did not say anything to herself in the mirror. She did not need to. She locked her apartment door behind her, and she started walking toward Harvard. What was she going to find when she got there? Room 402 was on the 4th floor, smaller than Lecture Hall D. Wood paneling, 60 seats, every one taken, 12 more people standing along the back wall. 3 cameras on tripods, a microphone clipped to a podium wheeled in from somewhere else. 2 men sat in the front row. One was tall, bald, mid-50s. The other had a graying beard. Both wore the kind of half-rimmed glasses that signaled 40 years of journal editing. The Princeton mathematicians. They were not smiling. They were already taking notes. A third man, younger, sat 2 seats over. The badge clipped to his jacket said the name of the journal. Dean Margaret Ashford sat at the end of the 2nd row. She did not speak. She looked at Talia once. She nodded 1 time. Charles Hollis sat against the side wall. He was looking at his shoes. Harold Whittaker stood at the front, suit, tie this time. He was smiling. Thank you all for coming on short notice. Before we begin, I would like to propose a small adjustment to the format. The room went still. Yesterday, Miss Underwood raised a concern about one of my preliminary lemmas. In the interest of fairness, and in the spirit of letting a young scholar present her work on her own terms, I would like to invite her to go first. She will have 30 minutes. I will respond afterward. We will then open the floor. He smiled at her. It seems only right that she be heard before I muddy the waters. He picked up a fresh piece of chalk. He walked to the chalkboard. The chalkboard was clean. He had erased it before the room came in. He held the chalk out to her. The board is yours, Miss Underwood. Talia did not move for a half second. Her notes were built around responding to him. She had assumed his lemma would already be on the board. Every page in her notebook started with the words, his, step 3. She had not prepared to lecture. She had prepared to answer. He had not given her an audience. He had given her a blank canvas. For the first time in 2 days, Talia's hand trembled. Not much, just enough that she pressed her thumb into her notebook to make it stop. She had prepared a counter-argument. He had handed her an empty room. She walked to the front. She took the chalk. She did not look at him. She did not look at the panel. She did not look at Eleanor in the back row. She turned to the chalkboard. She lifted the chalk to the top left corner, and she started writing his lemma. From memory, line by line, exactly as it had appeared in his 2018 paper. Could she actually remember every line? She wrote for 9 minutes. She did not pause. She did not look at her notes. She wrote his lemma from the 2018 paper the way you write the alphabet. From memory. From 6 years of grocery receipts. The room watched. Nobody coughed. Even the Princeton mathematicians stopped taking notes, just to watch a graduate student reconstruct a senior professor's 20-page lemma in real time on a clean chalkboard. She finished the first page. She moved to the second board panel. She kept writing. And then, at the start of the 3rd page, she made a mistake. A small one. She wrote a coefficient, a 2. It should have been a 3. She did not notice it right away. She wrote 2 more lines. Then she stopped. She looked back. She saw it. She crossed it out with a single chalk line. She wrote 3 above it. The cross-out lasted maybe 4 seconds, but the room had seen. Whitaker stepped forward. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. This is exactly the kind of carelessness I was worried about. We are 10 minutes in, and Miss Underwood has already had to correct her own transcription. He turned to the panel. Perhaps, Miss Underwood, you would like to sit down. Save yourself the embarrassment. A soft murmur from 2 senior faculty in the 3rd row. The bearded Princeton mathematician glanced at his watch. Talia did not turn around. Whitaker reached into his briefcase. He pulled out a printed sheet of paper. He held it up. And, in the interest of full disclosure, Mr. Hollis worked through Miss Underwood's so-called counterexample last night, at my request. He was unable to reproduce her result. I have his written notes here. They were time-stamped at 4:14 a.m. He looked at Charles. He smiled gently. Mr. Hollis, would you confirm that for the room? Charles Hollis looked up. His face was the color of paste. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He closed it again. He nodded. Once. Barely. Whitaker turned back to the room. He spread his hands. 2 careless mistakes in 10 minutes. A counterexample that does not reproduce when checked by my own teaching assistant. I think we have heard enough. The room was silent. Talia stood at the board, the chalk still in her hand, her back still half turned to the audience. Her shoulders had stopped moving. The camera caught it. She glanced just once at the door. If she walked out right now, half the room would not blame her. Half the room had expected her to walk out the day before. She did not walk out. She set the chalk down on the tray. She walked back to the small table where she had left her notebook. She opened it. The photograph was inside the front cover, black and white. A woman with gray hair pulled back tight. A grocery receipt and a pencil in her hands. Nobody else in the room could see it, only Talia. She looked at the photograph for 1 full second. She closed her eyes. She opened them. She picked up the notebook. She picked up the chalk. She turned around. She did not look at Whitaker. She looked at Charles Hollis. Mr. Hollis, I would like to ask you a favor. The room shifted. Whitaker's smile froze for the 2nd time in 2 days. I would like to invite you to come to the board, with me, right now, and walk this room through the verification you did last night, step by step. Charles Hollis did not move. I have no objection to your conclusion. I just want everyone to see how you got there. Whitaker turned to look at his teaching assistant. So did Dean Ashford. So did the Princeton mathematicians. So did 62 other people in the room. Talia held the chalk out toward Charles. Please, it will take 5 minutes. Charles Hollis sat very still against the side wall. Then, slowly, he stood up. Whitaker said his name, once, sharply. Charles. Charles did not look at him. He walked to the front of the room. He took the chalk. What was he about to write? On the board, in front of every person watching. Charles Hollis took the chalk. He did not look at Whitaker. He did not look at the panel. He did not look at the cameras. He looked at Talia. What do you want me to write? His voice was quiet, but it carried. Talia kept her own voice low, the way you talk to someone walking on ice. Just one thing. The assumption you used last night when you tried to verify my counterexample. The exact assumption, as you used it. Charles nodded once. He turned to the board. He found a clean section. He wrote it out. 3 lines, clean handwriting. Talia waited. Now, could you write the assumption from Professor Whitaker's 2018 paper, the published version, right next to it? Charles did not move for 2 seconds. Then he turned to the board. He wrote it. The 2 lines sat side by side. Charles's working assumption, Whitaker's published assumption. They were the same. Charles stepped back from the board. He looked at the lines he had just drawn. He understood, in that moment, what he had done. He had verified Talia's counterexample against the 2018 paper. The published version. The version that did not match what Whitaker had written on the chalkboard the day before. He turned slowly. He faced the room. He did not face Whitaker. He spoke quietly. The microphone clipped to the podium picked up every word. Professor, under your published assumption, your 2018 statement, Miss Underwood's counterexample does not work. That is correct. He paused. Under the assumption you wrote on the board yesterday, the one you are using to extend the conjecture in your next paper, her counterexample does work. He paused again. They are not the same statement. He set the chalk down, gently, on the chalk tray. He walked back to his chair against the side wall. He sat down. He folded his hands in his lap. The room did not breathe. Harold Whitaker stood at the podium. His right hand drifted up. He touched the frame of his glasses. He adjusted them. Then he reached up with both hands. He took them off. He held them. He looked at them. He looked at the chalkboard. He looked at the chalk lines Charles had written. He looked at his own published assumption next to his lecture hall version. He saw them, side by side, in the handwriting of his own teaching assistant. He did not speak. 7 seconds. Maybe 8. In the field of mathematics, where reputations are built decade by decade, that is the longest silence a senior professor can survive on a recorded panel. He did not survive it. His glasses slipped out of his fingers. They hit the floor. One of the lenses cracked clean through. Nobody moved to pick them up. The cameras at the back of the room caught all of it. Talia walked back to the chalkboard. She picked up Charles's chalk. She started working. Stay with me. You do not need to know mathematics. You need to follow 5 steps. Step 1. She circled the weak assumption, the one Whitaker had used the day before. The one Charles had just confirmed was different from the published version. Step 2. She wrote out a specific numerical case, the cleaner one, the one she had rebuilt at 3 in the morning. She showed it satisfied the weak assumption. Step 3. She walked through what Whitaker's lemma claimed should follow. Step 4. She plugged the numbers in, line by line, on the board, in front of everyone. The contradiction sat there, black chalk on green slate. Step 5. She did not stop there. She did not just demolish the lemma. She wrote a new assumption next to it, a stronger one. She showed how, under this stronger assumption, the lemma worked again. The Whitaker conjecture survived. The path forward was clear. She set the chalk down on the tray. She stepped back. She did not say anything. She waited. The bearded Princeton mathematician in the front row set his pen down. He stood up slowly. He walked to the chalkboard. He did not speak. He studied the board for 30 full seconds. He walked along its length, reading. He stopped at the new assumption Talia had written. He read it 3 times. He nodded once to himself. He turned to the room. His voice was steady. She is right. The original lemma, as stated, needs to be amended. Her proposed amendment preserves the rest of the conjecture. He paused. He looked at Talia. It is elegant, actually. I would have spent a year of my own work trying to find this fix. She did it in 6 hours, with a stack of notebooks on a kitchen table above a laundromat. We should all be so lucky. He sat back down. He did not look at Whitaker. The room exhaled. Then it broke open. 2 senior faculty in the 3rd row were writing furiously in their notebooks. A third was photographing the chalkboard with her phone. Dean Margaret Ashford had one hand pressed over her mouth. Her eyes were wet. But her shoulders were shaking the way shoulders shake when someone is trying not to laugh in church. Eleanor was crying quietly in the back row. Two other graduate students sitting next to her were looking at Talia like she was a person they had never met before. Charles Hollis was sitting against the side wall, and for the first time in 12 hours, his shoulders had dropped. Talia did not look at any of them. She walked the length of the chalkboard. She stopped in front of Harold Whitaker. He was still holding nothing. His glasses were on the floor. He was looking at her. She kept her voice low, even now, even here. "Professor, I read your paper when I was 20 years old. I caught this then. I almost wrote you a letter. I did not." She paused. "I am sorry it took me 6 years to walk down to the front of the room." Harold Whitaker, the man who had stood at the back of a lecture hall 90 minutes earlier and told a black graduate student she was in the wrong room, could not find his voice. He opened his mouth. Nothing came. He closed it again. Talia turned. She walked back to her seat. She picked up her notebook. She slid the photograph of her grandmother into the front cover. She sat down, and the room was no longer his. That evening, an email landed in every faculty inbox in the department. Dean Margaret Ashford had scheduled a formal review of the journal submission Whitaker was about to publish. The journal editor, who had been present in room 402, had already withdrawn the paper for revisions, pending Miss Underwood's correction. The dean's note added one more line. Co-authorship arrangements would be discussed in the morning. By 8 a.m. the next day, a second email arrived. Talia Underwood had been appointed as a formal collaborator on the revised manuscript. Her name would appear as co-author. Professor Whitaker had signed off voluntarily. A footnote at the bottom of the email noted that written acknowledgement had been formally requested by the dean's office for the department record. That was the polite way of saying it. At 10 that morning, Charles Hollis knocked on the door of the shared graduate cubicle in the basement of the math building. Talia was there with 3 other students. Charles asked if he could speak with her for 5 minutes. He carried a manila folder. He set it on her desk. He did not open it. 3 separate times in the past year, I noticed inconsistencies in his drafts. I wrote them down. I asked him about them. He told me, every time, to leave the mathematics to the mathematicians. He paused. I should have said something a year ago. I am saying it now. The folder is yours. Do what you need to with it. He turned to go. He stopped at the door. I am sorry for yesterday morning and for the year before that. He walked out. An hour later, a different knock. Henry Calloway. Pale. He stood awkwardly in the doorway. He did not come in. I did not know he talked about students that way. I only saw the side of him he showed me. I do not have a clean way to say this. I am sorry for everyone who saw the other side. He nodded once. He left. That evening, the internal recording of room 402 had been viewed 862 times. By the end of the week, it would leave the department. Justice does not always come with a verdict. Sometimes it comes with a manila folder, an unprompted apology, and a footnote nobody was supposed to read. 2 weeks later, Harold Whitaker stood at the same chalkboard. The room was full again, same faculty, same panel. The 2 Princeton mathematicians had stayed in town an extra day for this. Talia sat in the 3rd row. Eleanor sat next to her. Whitaker did not smile. He did not joke. He did not flick his hand at anyone. He spoke clearly. He acknowledged that the lemma he had defended a fortnight ago was, as stated, incorrect. He named Miss Underwood. He used the word grateful. It came out stiffly, the way you say a word you have not practiced, but it came out. He looked at Talia. He nodded once. She nodded back. Then Dean Margaret Ashford stood. She announced a new fellowship, discreetly funded, quietly named. The Underwood Reading Group. Graduate students from non-traditional backgrounds reading difficult papers together. Talia would chair it. Talia did not stand. She did not speak. She just kept writing in her notebook. That night, in the studio above the laundromat, Eleanor came over with takeout. 2 cartons of pad thai, a bottle of cheap wine. They ate at the kitchen table. After Eleanor left, Talia opened her notebook to the first page. The photograph of her grandmother was there. South Carolina porch, grocery receipt, pencil. Talia wrote one line underneath it. The camera does not show what she wrote. She closed the notebook. She did not win because she was louder. She did not win because she was angrier. She won because she had been reading carefully for years when no one was watching. The world will tell you, often, that you are in the wrong room. Sometimes the only answer is to walk to the front of it. I tell stories like this because I have watched too many brilliant people get talked over before they got to talk. Talia is not one person. She is every person who walked into a room and was sized up before they sat down. If you have ever been her, this one is for you. I see you. If this story moved you, leave one word in the comments. Underwood. Share it with someone who has ever been told they did not belong. And subscribe, because we have more stories about people the world underestimated, until it could not anymore. Yo, if you know you're right, don't apologize for taking up space. For real. You don't gotta be loud, you don't gotta clap back, just bring the receipts. And to the ones still holding back, trust your younger self. They saw it first. You just needed time to believe them.